Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Play, Pause, Rewind. For our 54th episode, we are doing something we don't do all that often. We're doing an actual rewind to an older movie, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Right off the jump, before we forget, two housekeeping items. One, if you were paying attention to the news, you probably know about the devastating earthquake in Turkey and Syria, and just wanted to shout out Twitch streamer and political commentator Hassan Piker, who has organized a charity for the victims of that natural disaster, which I will link in our description if you want to donate. If the charity is still live when I post this, which I think it will be. So far, $1.3 million raised.
Wow.
But if you have a little bit you can spare, that would be really cool. And also, on a lighter note, we have a TikTok now. It went live the day we're recording this. So that will be linked in the description as well in our link tree. So check that out if you like podcasts but want them in 30-second increments instead of an hour and a half.
We'll post the best bits there.
Yes. But Niles, how have you been the last 2 weeks since our last episode?
Well, I've been all right, hanging in there. And, yesterday was the infamous Super Bowl that happens every year, the Superb Owl Party. Such a fun time overall.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, it was a good game this year for sure. Just not a great ending.
Not a great ending. Yeah, it was pretty weak. Apparently it's very controversial because that holding call that we were talking about it's what determined the game at the end of the day.
Oh yeah, that one really did.
Definitely a questionable call, but
yes.
That's a topic for, I'm sure, many other podcasts who are not us.
Yes, we're this is not a sports podcast, but
no.
Yeah, Dylan, how about you? How have you been?
Oh, pretty good. I didn't feel great this morning after the combination of beer, pizza, and guacamole and chips that we all consumed yesterday. But other than that, doing pretty good. Just I have spent so much time making TikToks over the last 10 days, really. Just like sifting through our old episodes, finding clips. And then I think on Saturday, I spent like 3.5 hours editing TikToks. So
wow.
Yeah, but hopefully it's worth it for people who watch a lot of TikTok. But we this week are talking about 1989's Batman film. So yeah,
a bit of a rewind episode for us. And right off the bat, if this episode sounds familiar, we have done a rewind episode as well about a different Batman
one
movie.
Yeah, The Dark Knight.
If you guys want to hear that one, we reviewed The Dark Knight, one of my favorite movies for sure. So I encourage you all to go check that out. But yeah, today we're talking about Batman, the 1989 film, directed by Tim Burton and written by Sam Hamm and Warren Scarron. I think I pronounced that right.
Yes.
But yeah, the film stars Jack Nicholson, Michael Keaton, Kim Basinger, Robert Wuhl, Pat Hingle, Billy D. Williams, and Michael Gough.
Yep. And the film sort of follows, I'd say, a pretty early career Batman as he goes up against a local gangster, Jack Napier, who becomes the Joker and initiates a reign of terror over Gotham City, while the reporter Alexander Knox and photographer Vicky Vale are looking into sightings of this new Batman figure. So this movie is 34 years old, which is pretty wild.
Wow.
It comes from a very different era of superhero movie, I would say. The earliest of the current incarnation of the genre, I would argue.
Yes.
Like, the Superman movies had come out before this, the Christopher Reeve ones, but in terms of big blockbuster spectacle superhero, I think the Reeves movies and this were kind of the beginning of what we're in now.
Yeah, I think you're right there. And this movie, I mean, being like so I think like formative for like the superhero culture that we have today. It's very camp, much like
extremely
just like the Christopher Reeves Superman movies. They're camp. It's over the top sometimes. The costumes are silly, but like, it works because it's like they just kind of had a very consistent tone throughout this
Yes.
movie. Like it felt camp all the way through, which I love, and I think it works very well, especially with Tim Burton behind the camera directing things.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because I agree it is very camp by today's standards, but for the time it came out, I'm pretty sure it was considered pretty dark. And when
really?
when you take into account the main incarnation of Batman that came before was the Adam West TV show, makes a lot of sense.
True.
So,
yeah.
And I think, especially with Jack Nicholson's performance, you get a lot of the camp that was probably associated with that TV show. Because I think he's the biggest star of this movie. I think that's pretty well agreed upon across the board, but he's so silly in it, and I loved that. Like, he's still menacing because he is trying to kill a lot of people and does kill a lot of people, but he's just kind of fucking around a lot of the time, and I think that's really entertaining and different than what we're used to with the character. And we'll get more into that in spoilers a little bit, but it is darker in some senses, maybe than even modern incarnations of Batman because of how he behaves. But it is a very campy and goofy, feels very small stakes a lot of the time, even though it's not really.
Yeah, well, I think, in so many more modern interpretations, like the Dark Knight Rises or just the Dark Knight, not Rises, but Dark Knight, that whole movie is like, it's so clear, like which American city it's being shot in,
Yes.
like you can tell when you're walking, when like it's just doing the pan
it's
over
Chicago.
Of the city. Like it's Chicago. Like I can tell it's Chicago, but like they're like, no, it's Gotham. In this movie, it's like they're not trying to like make another city look like Gotham. It's like, this is Gotham. It's like very much on the map. It's dark, it's gloomy, and it's just like weird.
The art direction is pretty astounding. I love Gotham's combination of like Art Deco and just bad vibes, like miserable.
Yeah.
It's like it almost has like an intentional artificiality to it with all the matte paintings and the exteriors of Gotham. Like everything is a set. There's no on location stuff from what I could tell. So, and it like that, it almost feels like a stage show in a little way like that, but it's intentional. It's meant to look like that. It's meant to look like this other place that is not of our world, sort of, even though it is kind of grimy and down to earth in that way. But its artificiality is a strength, not a weakness, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Like I love the set design. Like just the atmosphere is just, it's very interesting and appealing, and it feels like Gotham, kind of like we've just been saying. And I think they made the right choice of having Tim Burton head this up, because Tim Burton definitely is tangential to that like gritty Batman tone. Like he's kind of like a weird, darker character. Like I can't remember all of his movies, but like Edward Scissorhands around the same time is just fucking like weird and just bizarre, and like you can definitely feel the Tim Burton DNA in this movie. Like if it was a different director, I think the feeling of Gotham would have been very different.
Yeah, probably. And maybe that's the case in the Schumacher films that come later, which I have. This is the first time I've seen this movie. I've not seen any of these four. So Batman Returns, Forever, and Batman and Robin. The first two are Tim Burton. The second two are Joel Schumacher. But the movie was less weird and Burton-y than I thought it was going to be. I'd always heard that about these movies, but I think that is more true for Batman Returns than this one. So I'm very excited to watch that, because I was actually hoping it would be stranger in this, and this movie is pretty straightforward narrative wise. Like it's and you do get the Tim Burton stuff in the atmosphere and the set design and all that, but that's really the extent of it, I think. But yeah, let's talk about Batman himself a little bit, because we really haven't. I thought both of his both Keaton's performance as Bruce Wayne and Batman were pretty enjoyable, and he's like a little bit more wild and unhinged than I'm used to seeing with the Bruce Wayne character.
Like, that's true, I guess. Yeah,
I
feel like I'm very used to like the Christian Bale kind of Batman who's cool, collected, like he's not super impulsive. But yeah, I think Keaton's Batman is a little more a little more quick, I think, to action sometimes.
Yeah, and he crosses lines that most versions of the character do not. And he's just a little crazier, you know? He goes a little wild sometimes, and that was fun to see. And I love the matter-of-fact way that he speaks to people throughout the movie. When he's not going crazy, he's speaking very to the point and directly. Like there's one point early on where this isn't a spoiler, but like one of the first times we see him, two characters are in this armory room he has, and they're just like shit talking him, not realizing he's right behind them the whole time. And then the one guy's like, I wonder where you got this suit of armor. And he's like, Japan. It's like, how do you know? It's like, because I bought it in Japan. It's just the way he delivers his lines is very satisfying to me in a weird way.
Yeah, I get that. I think there's a part of me that wishes we got a little bit more emotional complexity from Bruce in this movie, you know. And I mean, there's several others, and I haven't seen the next three. I think I've only seen the Returns one, Batman Returns. So I don't think I've seen the other two. But like, you know, in this movie, we get like a glimpse of like his tragedy and like, oh yeah, his parents died and all this stuff, and he was there. And you know, spoiler alert, it's Jack's fault. But you know, it's we'll get to that later. But you know, it's I think that's just kind of like the one top layer of the onion that they peeled back, and it's like, you can go a little bit more, give us a little bit more than just like Michael Keaton just being like staring at something and then kind of like looking over and then making an action or something. Like, I don't know, you could just have gone a step deeper, but again, they probably did in this next movies.
Yeah, they don't really dive into the psychology of Batman all that much in this. Like you see him brooding a little bit, but you don't. It's a movie that's not really focused on character or plot all that much. The plot is very simple and moves very quickly. The movie is about the atmosphere, and it's kind of a crime-fighting romp outside of that. I would say the main character of this movie is Gotham City and maybe the Joker.
Yeah, I guess so. It is a stark difference from The Dark Knight, you know, because I feel like The Dark Knight's a very complex movie with a lot of characters, and it's about the city, but it's also about the characters, and then this terror plot of the Joker, and then this one is like, oh yeah, the Joker's just kind of crazy killing people, and here's his origin story, and here's Batman, and here's Gotham.
Yeah, well, and it is an interesting comparison actually, because a lot of the ingredients are there in both of these movies. Like the Joker is the main antagonist, Harvey Dent is the district attorney, Commissioner Gordon is there working with Harvey Dent. Batman is sort of new to his relationship with these figures in criminal justice, but goddamn, the movies could not be more dissimilar. Like aside from the same ingredients being there, they are polar opposites in terms of just about everything, including Harvey Dent being an incredibly minor character despite being played by Billy D. Williams.
Yeah, but he didn't really get any fucking screen time.
Yeah, but apparently that is because he had signed or he was like promised that he would eventually become Two-Face. That never comes to pass. I don't know if he's in Returns or not, but when Two-Face does eventually appear in Batman Forever, Michael Keaton is no longer in the movies, Tim Burton is gone, and Val Kilmer is Batman, but Tommy Lee Jones plays Two-Face in that.
Oh, right.
Yeah. But one thing I will say that did not age well is the Knox, the reporter character's behavior towards Vale. Definitely sexual harassment, at least by today's standards. I don't know 100%. About back then, but
that guy's a creep. Yeah,
very inappropriate. And he was supposed to be like a lovable goof, I think, but I could not get on board with him because he is just like sexually harassing her in the workplace constantly.
yeah. It was a little on the nose there. Not the best character.
No, but the other main negative I have with the movie is just the romance subplot between Bruce Wayne and Vicky Vale. It's not good. It's completely undercooked, unearned.
Yes.
And a lot of the movie rests upon its shoulders, even though it doesn't work at all.
Yeah, I feel like that is kind of a failure of movies of this era to a certain degree. Like, there's like, we have to have a romance in the movie. We have to have that sub narrative in here somewhere, even if it doesn't need it. You know, I just feel like that was just like a crutch of the time.
Well, and it was probably due to the makeup of the writer's room, probably for the most part being men in this era. Like, a lot of these characters were written to fill the role of love interest and not have a lot of personality outside of that. Vicky Vale does not suffer from that as much. She does have some other traits, but she is she's fine.
Yeah.
But
yeah, we'll talk about her more in a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Overall, though, I think this movie was a lot of fun. I really liked it. I just like, it's not about the plot. It's not about the characters, really. It's just like Batmaning about in a really cool atmospheric setting. Lots of really harsh lights and great music too. And Jack Nicholson just being a murderous goofball for about 2 hours. It was a fun time.
Yeah.
It's a really fun movie. I would recommend it to people, definitely. It's, even if you don't end up enjoying it, like, it is a pretty seminal work in this genre that we're all fans of. So, like, yeah, give it a watch. It's on HBO. Just go check it out.
I mean, yeah, it's a fun time. And I mean, you know, we're in a time where there's so many fucking superhero movies and shows and just content to watch and consume, and so much of it is trying to be original and hard-hitting and gritty and, you know, like, realistic, and that's all well and good, but we are like such a saturation point, you know. Which is, you know, a plus and a negative, you know. So if you're looking for like something that's campy, kind of, you know, not too complex, something that like is a good solid Batman story for sure, and it's got some, you know, fun action in it, this is a great movie for that. I would recommend it too. Yeah,
it's definitely from a more auteur driven era of the genre too. Like, if you're someone who's getting fed up with the homogeneity of the MCU, which a lot of people, including us, who like these movies a lot and are seeing Ant-Man in like 3 days, this is sort of an antidote to that. It's a same with the Raimi Spider-Man movies, and I'm sure the Schumacher Batmans as well, and Nolan and stuff like that. It's like, we are missing a lot of that creative directing flair that was allowed to filmmakers earlier on in the genre. When you're trying to pump out 3 movies and 3 seasons of TV every year, you don't really have time as a studio to let the filmmakers make films, which is why they're all the same now. So, you know, there's that. But go Batman 1989. Fun ass time. We're gonna transition into spoilers now.
Yes.
Holy hell, does Batman kill a lot of people in this movie?
Yeah, he kind of does. Like, it's when
he blows up the chemical plant at the end, it's like there were at least 15 people in there, probably more.
He definitely killed some people doing that. Like, and he, like, indirectly at the end kills the Joker.
Oh yeah, for sure.
By putting the weight on him, and it's like, I didn't pull the trigger, but you did. You fucking did, Batman. You killed the Joker.
Yeah, I love that, how the Joker is so funny in this. I love his escape plan is like, he's gonna ride the little rope ladder up on his little tiny helicopter and fly away.
Well, that feels like just pulled right out of the classic like Batman TV show. Like, that's gotta be like, that's gotta be a plot.
Well, I don't know if there's that specifically, but there is that clip from the Adam West show of like Batman hanging on a ladder from a helicopter while like a shark is attacking him, and he's like kicking the shark. But it is funny in because we in this era, like with the Zack Snyder Batman, right? Like, it was pretty controversial that he had Batman just like murking fools in his movie.
Yeah, true.
And in this one, like, Batman kills a lot of people, but for whatever reason, I'm totally fine with it here. I'm not fine with it in the Snyder movies, though. Like, I don't know why, but I think tonally this movie is just on such a different level that it's okay. And this movie is so disloyal to the Batman lore across the board that who gives a shit, you know?
Oh yeah, I mean, well, I got like some show notes about this later too, but like, you know, this movie, it does not like spend any time dwelling on the cops or the criminals, you know? Like
Yeah.
it's really just Joker and Batman. And
We can
like,
talk about that right now.
oh yeah, for sure. Like, you know, I think the thing that I just meant to say with this is just like, you know, they're just not given a lot of screen time, and
not
they're
at
not a
all.
focal point of the movie. So it's like, and it's not a realistic movie either. It's campy as hell. So it's like, why not? And so I think that's kind of the reason why is it's like we're not given a lot of time to really look at these characters. So yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. Like, I didn't really care when he was blowing up the chemical plant. I was like, yeah, go for it, dude.
I laughed. It was really fucking funny.
Well, the Joker was up there and he's like, ha ha, you missed me. Basically, like, you fucking.
Well, the criminals in the movie too, at the start, there's like a seemingly robust organized crime syndicate going on. And then when the Joker takes over, they all just become Joker gang. Like they're all running around with like little Joker jackets. And it's a very theatrical movie. Like it feels like a stage production almost. It's pretty small scale in its cast of characters. It's heightened and very you know, it looks like it's on a set deliberately. It's very fun with that. And just I love when Joker just goes to shake that other mobster's hand and just electrocutes him to the point where he's just a crispy skull.
It's so over the top and improbable, but I love it. And yeah, just like we were like, you know, you look back at our Dark Knight podcast, which I encourage you all to go check out. But I think in that episode, we talk about the portrayal of criminals and the portrayal of cops for probably like 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, because that movie, you know, it was made in 2008. Several years had passed, and you know, in the light of the George Floyd protests and Black Lives Matter movements, you know, we now know that the cops are not grown on our side. Yeah, it's common knowledge, I guess, to say.
The more people in America have caught up to what Black people have known for a very long time, which is that the cops are a violent gang of criminals. And the Batman, in a lot of cases, including the Dark Knight trilogy, is pretty extreme propaganda.
Oh yeah, like it is like, it's like mourning these fallen cops, like, you know, and like all this other stuff. And
they're great movies.
Oh yeah,
but
fantastic.
But my God, do they love cops?
Yes, it's kind of it feels like pro cop propaganda to a certain degree. This movie, this Batman, not that way at all. Like the cops are really just bumbling fools who are incompetent or corrupt. Decent representation of the real world, but
that seems pretty accurate. Yep.
And then like, you know, they're kind of just standing around, like not doing anything. Like I think you said this to me yesterday when we were watching the Super Bowl. Like Commissioner Gordon is doing nothing the whole movie. He's just kind of like there for reaction shots.
Well, yeah, he doesn't do anything at all. He's barely involved in the story. Harvey Dent as well is just there. They're, I guess, doing something in the background, but instead they're like walking around with the mayor, who's being like the mayor in Jaws. It's like the parade must proceed. We have to do this, even though there's like the crime wave will stop for the parade. It's fine.
Yeah, it's like, come on, dude. But yeah, it's like the cops are just portrayed in that way. It's a very campy. The criminals are very much the same way too, where they're like, they're over the top, they're extravagant, they're just bad guys. Like it doesn't really,
there's not a systemic critique here. It's like they're filling their role in the story that exists. It's a theater production. That's what's going on. Like
yes, exactly, just like you said. None of them stop to question themselves and think, wait, why am I following this mobster now when he just killed my boss over there? Well, he just killed my friend too, and now I'm his goon. What the hell? Like,
the entire mob just becomes like Joker's henchmen because it doesn't matter. It's not about that. It's about it's about Joker versus Batman.
Like even I think like like the first guys that Batman like clobbers in the film, I think they just stole like some old woman's purse, and they're just like, obviously they're just trying to like get some money to get by, but then Batman comes in and roundhouse kicks them through a door, and it's like, just tell everybody my name, and it's like, dude, do you think all the criminals are connected to each other? Like, come on, dude, like these guys are just like,
well, I mean, that's
down
like
on their luck, but
that's like the critique of Batman. It's like he's just beating the shit out of like petty criminals and mentally disabled people instead of like helping the system get better. But it's like, yes, Batman as a billionaire could be addressing the systemic issues with Gotham City, but then we wouldn't have a Batman movie. So like, we get it. But
yeah, this is way more fun to watch than Batman going around being a philanthropist and giving people money. Like, this is cooler than that.
This is more fun. I would like, and yes, I acknowledge if there was a Bruce Wayne Batman in real life, he would be a fucking problem for society in many ways. But this is a movie, like, we could just have fun. And
yeah,
I will say though, like we've talked about already, but I will say the plot of this movie is the least interesting bit about it. It doesn't really have that much momentum or character growth, in my opinion. It just kind of like things happen, but it's not the focus. It doesn't matter. It's okay. It's just an excuse for all the fun stuff that we're getting to engage with.
Like, yeah, you're right there. The plot is very simple. It's like, oh, the Joker becomes the Joker because he got betrayed, and then he takes
and falls into acid, which is a reference to what happened, like his Killing Joke origin.
Oh yes, yeah.
But like it's so weird because Bruce wants to tell Vicky Vale that he's Batman and he can't, which is fine. And then she just later shows up in the Batcave and is a part of all of this now. It's like, oh, okay, all right, we're doing that. That's fine.
It's like, all right, we skipped the explanation, but that's fine. But yeah, it's like the plot is, yeah, like you're saying, there something happens, there's an event, then something else happens, there's an event, then Bruce meets the girl, and then something else happens, and then they hang out or go on a date.
Yeah, they go on a date in his house, which that was a great scene, actually.
That was a good scene.
The two scenes, actually. The dining room scene was a lot of fun, where they're like having a very awkward, uncomfortable dinner at opposite ends of the long table. And then I really liked the scene in the kitchen with Alfred. Like, it's it was a much, it just gave this really warm relationship between Alfred and Bruce, which we really don't see all that much of. There's some of it in the Batman, but not in the same way. Like, this is a much sort of cozier relationship that they seem to have, which was nice. But yeah, I mean, the romance though doesn't work between Bruce and Vicky. It's nothing. It's
the love story, like we said earlier, it just feels unearned to me. Like, you know, with Vicky Vale, she's not just like a Jane Doe, you know, or just like a stand-in for the weak, the girl in the movie that the guy is supposed to win. She's not necessarily like that. Like, I kind of felt like she's a step above a Bond girl, you know, like those classic old Bond films. Because she has more agency.
She does have more agency. You're right.
She has more agency. She has like a real profession, you know. But
it almost felt to me like, and given the era and the biggest superhero movies that had come right before this, it makes sense. It almost feels like the writers wanted a Lois Lane character. And because she's a reporter who's like, or she's a photographer. Sorry, she's a photographer, and she's like looking into what's going on with Bruce Wayne. She felt kind of Lois Lane to me. Yeah. But part of the problem is that they gave her like a dorky guy who was crushing on her too, which in Superman, like, that's kind of Clark Kent, and that works because that's the fun of that relationship. But in this, like, Batman is not around the newspaper, so I don't know. It was just I don't even know if that's what they were going for, but that's what it felt like to me. They were going for a Lois Lane type, and it didn't totally fit. And also, it felt like Bruce Wayne was such an unknown quantity to so many people in the movie, which was interesting.
It's like, who is this Bruce Wayne guy?
Yeah,
like the billionaire who lives in our city. Like,
like, and I guess he's like, I guess he's a recluse in some iterations of the character, and maybe that's what they were going for. But it was very funny that they just had no information on his backstory. Like, it's a twist to them that his parents were killed and he's an orphan.
Yeah, it's like, guys, this is like super well known, but whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, the love interest, like the romance between Vicky and Bruce is it's just kind of forced in there a little bit. Like, sure, they get the introduction, they have that nice meal at home with Alfred and stuff, but like I just don't see it, like there's just not the chemistry there. Like, and
there's
then
no build up to it. They they fall in love too quickly. Like, because they have the nice scene, which is the best part of the whole relationship, and then they have sex, and then they're like in love and having relationship problems that you would expect from a relationship that's been going on for a couple months at that point, or weeks.
Yeah.
It was very odd, but
yeah, it's
different
they met
era.
on Monday. They met on Monday and they fell in love by Wednesday.
Yeah, they had one date, and I understand like relationships in movies are usually accelerated for the sake of like we got 2 hours, we're gonna do this at a little bit faster rate, but it felt a little bit too abrupt in a lot of ways for me.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think one of the other things that I have a problem with Vicky is just like by the end of the movie, it's literally feels like she's a damsel in distress. Like, that's kind of like just what her character devolves into. Like, Jack Nicholson is literally carrying her on his shoulder up like King Kong up a fucking like tower. It's
an
like
endlessly tall clock tower. I love the matte painting of the stairs when you see how far down it goes. It's like, this thing is 200 floors tall. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's like, what the fuck?
It plays into the absurd like nature of this Gotham City. All the buildings are way too tall and goofy and silly, but that's the whole vibe of the place. Like, massive structures that would not work in reality, and that's why it's fun.
Yeah, it works. It definitely works.
Speaking of things that work, though, I love how much time Joker spends just sort of fucking around, messing with people. Like, he is definitely killing a lot of people, but he spends a lot of time just kind of dancing with his crew. He has a guy who carries a boombox around for him, and he like shows up at the parade on a float, and it's throwing money at people, which, people of Gotham, are you dumb? Like,
yeah.
What do you get out of there? But
yeah, like, the money's not worth it, guys. Yeah.
I feel like Jack Nicholson's Joker is what Jared Leto's Joker wishes he was, because he's like the gangster prince of Gotham for a little while, which is what they were going for with Leto, but nothing about Leto's Joker works at all. And this is just fun and games the whole time.
No, I like him a lot. Like, he's because he really is so absurd, just so out there. I think just like Jack Nicholson did such a great job. It's such a charismatic and chaotic performance. And I think, I did a little like digging on it too, of like Nicholson, just like quotes about like his experience embodying the Joker as a role.
Yeah.
And he commented that one of his favorite parts was just the unpredictability of this character. It's not super limiting, and that's something that he just really loved about it, that he could just like, this character is literally just chaos incarnate. I'm going to try and embody that as much as I can. So I think he really appreciated that, and it came across really well. And I think this role, if you know Jack Nicholson, he likes to improvise. He loves doing that. He's a great comedic actor. And so there was several moments throughout the movie where I don't know if he improvised lines, but I know he improvised some movements and stuff, and like some mannerisms, like how he addresses like some of his goons at one point, I think was improvised. And then I think he does like
"You're my number one guy" improvised. The delivery of it is so unique.
It's like, so over the top.
You're my number one guy.
Yeah, it felt like a Heath Ledger impersonation for a second.
It was great. And it's funny because that's what his boss says to him too before he sends him to the chemical plant to get caught, right? So
yeah, I guess that is kind of a good little parallel there. Because I wish that, because he does eventually kill that goon who he said is his number one guy, and a part of me was like, oh, I wish they just lingered on that for a moment, let it breathe, because that is kind of like a big, oh my god, he's ruthless and he killed his number one guy, but it's like, oh, I guess he just did that, or that just happened to him earlier in the movie where he was the number one guy.
Yeah,
axe. So there's a lot of cycles in here.
I even liked him as just the mobster Jack Napier before he becomes the Joker. Like, he was a great antagonist as that too. Also, at the end, when Batman takes his like gas balloons, he just looks up and he's like, my balloons. I just love how earnestly sad he is that his balloons are gone.
It was very cute. I loved it. Like Jack Nicholson's delivery of like every line in this movie is great. Like,
it's perfect.
Even that one of like the "Have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight?" Like, so fun.
Such a maddeningly strange line. Before we talk on that, just one note I forgot about Vicky Vale that I think is interesting. Michelle Pfeiffer was considered for this role, but Keaton objected to her casting because apparently they'd had a previous relationship. And if you didn't know, that is interesting because she is in the next movie as Catwoman, Selena Kyle. So just a little trivia for y'all. But back to Dancing with the Devil in the Pale Moonlight. Just some very strange thing that he likes to say to people before he kills them.
Before we hopped on this podcast, Dylan and I were both doing a little research, like trying to see if there's anything behind that quote. Like, some people were like, oh, it's like the Nietzsche quote of "Have you ever stared into the abyss and the abyss stares back into you?" And some people are like really making a stretch of like, oh, it's like it's talks about their emotional connection between Batman and Joker because like they both kind of created each other. But I think it's just kind of a fun line. Like, I don't know if you want to read too much into it.
No, and I think that was the conclusion that most people have come to. And I like you mentioned in our conversation earlier that it's kind of like Jules in Pulp Fiction, where he's like, he reads that Bible verse and he's like, I don't know, I just thought it was a cold-blooded thing to say to a motherfucker before I killed him. Like, it doesn't have any deeper meaning necessarily. It's just like a thing he does. And I think, usually in stories, like, everything is meant to mean something, but sometimes it's okay if someone just has a thing they do.
It's totally fine. It works out very well here, I think, because it's like he's just chaotic. And I think ultimately the quote is really just like, have you ever just like intentionally gone out and kind of just danced with the devil, just like made this weird deal or done this or grieved or something? Like, there's just so many different ways you can interpret it. And since the Joker's so chaotic, I'm glad that he said it, because you could just come at it from a million different angles and find something unique about it.
And I love when Bruce says it back to him at the end, just like it's like he shoulder taps him. It's like, hey, have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight? Keaton's performance is so funny too. Like, we've been talking about Jack Nicholson a whole lot more, but Keaton is very entertaining in this movie. It's like, you want to get nuts, let's get nuts. Like, just slapping the thing with the poker. It's so weird. It's such a weird movie. I love it.
It's very of its era to a certain degree. Because like, I think there's one point just stuck with me because I like his performance all throughout, and the costumes are great and everything like that. But I think it's when Vicky's in the Batcave for the first time, and Bruce is there with a black turtleneck and jeans, blue dark jeans, and I was just like, what the fuck was going through their head when they said that's the costume choice for the rich billionaire? And
this is where Steve Jobs was inspired for his wardrobe choices.
We have to thank Michael Keaton for the iPhone.
Tim Burton is ultimately responsible for the iPhone 8. But Keaton's Batman is he's a good, like, he's good. He's fun. And his casting was super controversial at the time because he had been typecast as a very comedic actor. Like, I think there was even a group of people who got a petition put in the newspaper about like, stop Mr. Mom from being Batman. So the the same type of people who were trying to restore the Snyderverse today were protesting Michael Keaton in the late 80s.
Down with Michael Keaton. With Michael
and
Keaton.
The suit. I want to talk about the suit a little bit. I love the design of the suit. Aesthetically, it's a very good design. The construction of the mask is not good though. It doesn't fit right. It has like little bits that are just sticking out too far. I bet it's better in the second one. I bet they iron it out.
I'm sure I can't remember, but yeah, I think the costume's not bad. I think it just looks a little rubbery.
It's very rubbery, but
it's like, hey, you couldn't have made that look just a little less like rubber, whatever. It's still a good suit.
Yeah. And he can't turn his head in real, like they're in the suit. Keaton could not turn his head, which it's weird, but I think it adds a really neat deliberateness to his motion. Like every time he turns, it's always like,
yeah, it's whole body. Yeah.
It's really, it's a statement. Like it's a creative choice that Batman moved that way. And I think it kind of works. It wouldn't work in like a Nolan universe type thing, but it works for this.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't work with Christian Bale. He needs that mobility, but yeah, and I think he
specifically asked for it, right?
Yeah, he did. But yeah, the absurdity of the suit for Keaton, I think it just kind of speaks to the general absurdity of the movie too. Like, this guy's flying a fucking bat jet around Gotham. How the hell?
In between buildings. Well, I guess Bale's Batman does that too in The Dark Knight Rises.
It's a little bit better, I would say, just because that it's not a campy movie. It's very realistic.
I would argue that The Dark Knight Rises is a very campy movie.
In a lot of respects, yes.
Yeah, it's very silly. Like Bane and his army of goons trap the entire police force underground for like 6 months and take over the city while driving a nuclear bomb around in one of 3 trucks. Like, that's a goofy ass movie.
That's a pretty camp when you put it that way. Yeah.
They blow up a football field. They killed the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Well, they had it coming. But like, yeah, just the vehicle, the Batjet, the one in Nolan, I find much more believable in its mobility and how it maneuvers.
The design of this one is so much better, though.
Oh yeah,
and you get that sleek, wonderful shot of it silhouetted against the moon, which
that's cool.
Is a reference in our favorite thing in the video game Injustice 2 when Batman uses his ultimate ability. Every time we would play that game, it would go up. It does that, and then the ability is just like it goes up. And we would always be like, "No killing," and as it machine guns whoever Batman is fighting from like 60,000 feet into the ground.
No killing.
No
but
killing.
I'm going to shoot you a bunch.
No guns. No killing. Except unless you're Michael Keaton Batman, who has lots of guns, lots of killing.
Yeah, then you can do whatever you want.
It's his number one thing.
Yeah, I like it. And I like the one of the other things that I really liked about this movie moving away from Batman was the Smile X makeup stuff. Like, we talked about how we didn't really like, or the plot kind of felt like an afterthought, or wasn't really a focal point here. I do appreciate how the Joker's kind of ultimate plan was to kill everyone via makeup, which is like very
like a combination of products or something.
Yes, right? A combination of products, and it'll basically make you do the smile thing, and it'll kill you. Very clever and original. I don't think a lot of mass murderers have thought to use makeup, but I thought that was just funny. And then what I thought was really good was how the newscasters, they have like such a big presence in just driving the narrative because they have to report everything,
yes,
and recap stuff, and they're not wearing any makeup for like half the movie. And I just thought that was very funny of just like these people, the guy just looks so grim, you can see the bags under his eyes.
I love how bad they make them look without the makeup, like the implication being that like they're just nothing without it. I thought that was really funny. And because and it's just the newscasters. Like Commissioner Gordon doesn't look like gross and shit without makeup. He just looks like it's just the newscasters. They're made up for their show, and they're made to like have big welts on their face and stuff without it. Their hair is all messed up. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's a good little like joke in the film, which I thought was just very cleverly placed. And I guess circling back to go for it. What were you gonna say?
But just like on the note of the makeup and the hairspray like being poison stuff, like it really, this is a great illustration of how the plot is not really the point, because all this is happening. Batman just figures out the combination and gives it to people off screen. Like he's just like, here, Vicky Vale, take this to the media. I figured it out. And then we move on and it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah. And then he goes off and still blows up the factory, but it's okay.
Yeah. Well, he wanted to stop the production, but
yeah, that's true. I guess
these are all things that in a different movie, or a movie that takes itself seriously in a different way, because I do think this movie was taking itself seriously for the time. Looking back on it 34 years later, it has a very different vibe, but for the time it was much darker and more gritty and serious than they were used to for this character, which is wild to think about, but it's true. But you were gonna say something. Sorry.
I was just going to bring it back to the Joker and Batman, because there's a point that I think is interesting in this film, and I'm on the fence about it, because throughout the film we learn that Jack, the Joker, is the one who killed Batman's parents, so he is ultimately responsible for Batman's creation. On the flip side, Batman drops Jack into the vat of the acid, or Smilex, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Thus turning him to Joker. So they are both responsible in a way for each other's alter personas, these characters that they create and just become. So it's poetic, and I appreciate that. I just think it's a little too neat. It's kind of like they're just tying everything up a little bit too much. But as we've been talking through this conversation too, you mentioned we were talking about the number one guy who got shot, and Jack was the guy at the start who was the number one guy, the mobster who got betrayed. So it's like, I think that there's a lot of small little like parallels in this movie that were intentional, and I think I just didn't pick up on all of them, like that number one guy thing. Like, they're small and they're little, but I think obviously the biggest one is the Joker and Batman, how they were, responsible for each other's creation. I think just that moment maybe it was just a little bit too much, but I don't know. That's just me, honestly.
I think it works for this movie. I know a lot of people consider it like blasphemous for Batman lore for this to be the case. I can't care about that with this film. I just don't. It doesn't. None of that bothers me, because the movie is so distinctly its own thing. But yeah, everything about the Joker I just loved. He was so funny and interesting. And also just when he's killing Bruce Wayne's parents, it's like for no fucking reason at all.
Yeah, he's not even trying to rob him
into the alley. They pull the pearls because that's part of it. It has to happen, right? And then he just shoots him, and he's gonna shoot the kid too.
Yeah.
One structural choice I thought was interesting was we don't start with that scene. We don't see that until much, much later in the movie. And I wonder, for audiences at the time, was like Bruce Wayne going to that alley and dropping the flowers, was that like actual mysterious behavior, or was it common knowledge among mainstream audiences already that about what happened to Bruce Wayne's parents? I don't know if the TV show touches on that at all. I wouldn't be shocked if it doesn't, though.
Yeah, I have no idea, honestly. I mean, with the amount of like cartoons and everything that were created about Batman and for how long he's been around, I feel like it's general knowledge, or it should have been general knowledge at the time.
Maybe.
But this was pre-internet, so there's, I think it's I think the studio wanted to make a safe choice of being like, let's make sure we explain this, but we can make it a mystery in the movie. Like, because I bet there's plenty of people who watched this movie because of Michael Keaton, because they recognize these names.
Or Jack Nicholson, probably.
Yeah.
Because Jack Nicholson was top billing, not Michael Keaton.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, because his name is first before Keaton in the title crawl.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe that's it. They just wanted to make sure people got the story. And I don't know. But, yeah, it is kind of weird.
And that makes sense, too, tying Bruce's parents' death to the Joker. Like, it, from a non-comics fan perspective, like, it makes the screenplay more neat and tidy. Like, the hero has this extra motivation to fight the villain because the villain is responsible for who they are today. Like, it from a screenwriting point of view, like, it totally makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's I think overall too, this movie kind of served as like an introduction for a new audience, a new wave of viewers to get reintroduced to Batman.
Yeah.
Because I think, there was a part of me that was half expecting Jack's wife. I can't remember her name, but like he's got this kind of blonde partner.
She was the mobster's wife that was cheating on him with Jack. That's why the mobster sends Jack to get caught at the chemical factory at the beginning.
That makes more sense now.
Because he knows, and that's the weight behind the "you're my number one guy" line. Because Jack's like, motherfucker, he knows.
Yeah, I guess, I didn't really pick up on that too much, but like, there's a part of me that felt like that girl was going to become Harley Quinn.
Harley Quinn,
like, yeah, which would have been fine, but I think that would have been too much.
Well, Harley Quinn didn't exist yet. She was first created in Batman the Animated Series, which was in the 90s.
Really? Oh, yeah. I thought she had already been around before then. Well,
no.
Never mind. Well,
yeah, Harley Quinn is a pretty recent addition to Batman lore as far as the whole history of it goes.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that strikes my comment down.
But that is interesting that, like, this is because Harley Quinn is a pretty iconic staple of the Batman mythos at this point, like in this time. But like, this movie is from an era where that character just straight up did not exist, which is pretty wild.
Well, yeah, I'm, with Billy D. Williams being in there and Commissioner Gordon, you got all these kind of like minor characters in there just for the name and the character. So I think that they just didn't want to throw too much of the audience too fast. They got 3 more movies after this, so plenty of time to expand upon some of these characters. But yeah, I think it was just kind of setting the bar for what this kind of movie could be, what people could expect.
Yeah, and the movie could have stood to be more patient with its pacing and breathe a little bit more. Like, it moves at a clip, which makes it very fun, but also like things like the romance suffer as a result of that. Like, nothing really feels cooked all the way to me.
I agree.
But yeah, and we talked about it a little bit with the art direction and stuff, but Gotham in this movie really feels like it is of another world. It's not meant to be something that fits into our like universe, like the Nolan movies or the Snyder movies are. It's and I think the Batman from last year sort of continued in this trend a little bit too, in its own way. It's more grounded than this, obviously, but its Gotham is very like grimy to an extent that is less realistic, I think. Like, Batman himself is very realistic-ish, and his car is very downplayed, but Gotham has a very distinct sense of place in both this and that movie.
I would agree. Yeah, this is very much its own kind of universe. Yeah, but one other thing that I wanted to touch on coming to the end here a little bit, but we both watched the Super Bowl this weekend, and I feel like kind of big news, the Flash trailer officially dropped, and surprise, surprise, Keaton's Batman was in it. Who could have seen that coming? But yeah. It was kind of an interesting timing, because you and I had already agreed to do this for our next episode, and then all of a sudden the trailer dropped, and it's like, well, shit, cool.
Yeah, that was not planned, but hopefully we get some nice SEO out of that. But
who knows?
Yeah, I think it is kind of fun to see that. I do understand the cynical nostalgia bait element of it. that is absolutely there and valid. But I don't give a shit about in this instance. I really don't. I don't like Ezra Miller's Flash, so I'm glad to have a character that I do like in it too. And the Supergirl looks cool as well.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wasn't really super interested in the movie, but everything I hear about it's great, and the trailer looked neat. And yeah, like you just said, Ezra Miller is a little bit complicated.
Yeah, they are a criminal, literally. Like they've done a lot of really bad shit. But whatever.
That's whatever. Yeah,
that's outside of our purview. We're not in charge.
It'll just be interesting, I think, to see Keaton reprise the role as Batman. See what they tweak, because like in that trailer, I mean, the Batcave looked basically identical. The suit looked basically the same, but I'm sure it's going to look better than the rubbery one that we got this time.
Yeah. Well, it does make the movie Birdman either a whole lot funnier or a whole lot more sad, depending on how you want to look at it. If you haven't watched Birdman, it's very good. It stars Michael Keaton, Edward Norton, and Emma Stone. Very good movie. Meant to look like it is all one shot, the entire film. So.
Oh yeah, I still haven't seen it. I need to watch that, but I've heard great things.
Yeah. But Batman 1989. I like it. I think it's a fun, campy romp that is a pretty foundational text in the superhero genre, the modern superhero genre.
Definitely worth the watch. And it's worth the rewatch. If you haven't seen it in a long time, plug it back in. Get your VHS copy out, plug it in. It's gonna be a great movie. Or you can just stream it.
Yeah, it's on HBO Max. Just do that instead.
Yeah. But
all right.
Now, let's shift to the last segment of our episodes where we talk about the other stuff that we've been doing, stuff we've been watching, things we've been reading. Dylan, why don't you kick us off? What have you been up to?
I have been playing a couple games. I've been playing the CRPG game Pillars of Eternity from several years ago. Very in the style of the old Baldur's Gate D&D games. You have a in-depth RPG, whole party of characters going on this fantasy adventure. It's play pause combat, which I have never done before. Like the way you play a D&D campaign is like turn-based, right? But play pause is everything's happening in real time, but you can pause it whenever you want and like tell your guys to do certain abilities or move in certain ways, and you unpause and they start doing that. Interesting game. I like it. I also played a little bit of Hi-Fi Rush, the surprise instant drop after trailer reveal game where it's like an action combat game, but you play to the rhythm of the music that's in the background, and you get like combo points for hitting your attacks on the beat. And also reading second book of the Dresden Files about the wizard who is a consulting detective for the Chicago PD called Full Moon. This time he is investigating like werewolves and stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a fun, like pulpy little series. Also continuing with The Last of Us and Poker Face and the Super Bowl, obviously. Nice. But that's it for me. What about you?
So you'll be glad to hear I did start The Last of Us.
Yay.
I'm only 2 episodes in, so I know the next one is... A lot of people are saying it's one of the best episodes of television ever. So
it's very good.
I've got high expectations for that episode and the rest of the show because I've been very satisfied with it. This really, like, Walking Dead, Last of Us, like way up there, stratosphere. Like, I can't believe we wasted our time with the Walking Dead.
Well, The Walking Dead was good for
it was for a while. It was
really good for like 3 to 5 years, and then it stopped being really good. But one thing on The Last of Us I think is very funny. Supreme Idiot Ben Shapiro had some things to say about the episode you're about to watch. And he's like, it's a zombie show and there are no zombies in this episode. What's going on? And it's like, Ben, since you are not a very smart person, let me break it down to you. The zombie genre is not about zombies. It never has been. Zombie movies and shows are about people and how different types of people respond to a world where the rules have been taken away. Zombie shows are not about fucking zombies.
No, they're fun little set pieces to walk around and gawk at, but like,
yeah,
it's not about them. It's about
they provide action and tension, but it's about the relationships and the people. Good note to remember that before Ben Shapiro became a right-wing talking head, he was a failed screenwriter. So of course he doesn't understand stories.
Yeah, that'll influence you a lot.
He failed in Hollywood and just embraced his bitter loser, and that's what he does now.
Well, speaking of bitter losers, I continue to watch Attack on Titan.
Yeah,
it's great. I think I'm like 8-9 episodes in now, and I'm in the good spot now. It's getting great, and I'm just excited to see where it goes next. Like, and I think you and I were kind of talking about this, Dylan, offline, of like, I think with Attack on Titan, at least for me, and I think with some other animes too, there's a little bit of a learning curve where, it maybe takes you 3 episodes to really understand it and get behind it. And then at that moment, you're like, okay, I'm all in, let's go. So
yeah, you kind of got to sink in to whatever it is.
Yeah. So I was a little hesitant at first, Attack on Titan, but I'm liking it now.
Doesn't that theme song just go so hard?
It's pretty fucking cool. I like it a lot. I like it, and the recaps really help me too, because like that world is confusing to me. Just the walls and everything, like where everyone is in relation to each other, is like and the time jumps are a little confusing too, but it's working for me. It's clicking. And then we just rewatched the Hunchback of Notre Dame, old Disney animated movie. I think that was the first time that I've fully watched it all the way through.
Really?
I'm pretty sure because I think I've seen like scenes and little bits, but I don't think I've ever watched it all the way through.
Huh.
It's a little upsetting at times, for sure.
It's a dark movie, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Quasimodo gets fucking like humiliated by everyone. Like, people throw food at him for like 5 minutes. It's like it's a little too much sometimes.
And the villain has that like song about how he basically can't control his lust and thinks like it's like isn't he asking God to like kill Esmeralda because he can't have her or something?
Basically, yeah. The villain is one of the best Disney villains ever. He's irredeemable. He sucks. he's a great villain, but you hate him. And I think for the most part, the movie holds up. It was made a while ago. I can't remember exactly when, but
it was Disney Renaissance era. It was in the 90s.
The ending of the movie, not great.
Well, I don't even remember how
I'll get on my soapbox here for a little bit.
Okay.
So you have Esmeralda, who's kind of the love interest of Quasimodo, but there's also this dashing knight.
Yes,
who's like
the city guard. Yeah,
the city guard captain. And so him and as Esmeralda, they basically have a relationship that kind of comes out of nowhere that you don't really see coming, but you kind of do as an audience member. But it catches Quasimodo by like surprise, and he's kind of like taken back by it. But like at the end of the film, the messaging gets kind of weird, because he basically comes over to the two of them, puts their hand together like he's giving them the seal of approval. Like, you guys can be together, you two normal people, but I'm going to be Quasimodo still. And then it's like, okay, that's weird to begin with. Why even make the relationship like a part of the film? Why couldn't it just have ended with the three of them just friends? Like, that would have been, you didn't need a romance in the movie, but it was Disney Renaissance, whatever. And then they go outside, Esmeralda and the guy, like the captain, to like, stand in front of the people and get applause. And that happens. And then they turn around, and then it's like, Quasimodo, now it's your time. You can come out. Like, it's your special time to get some applause and recognition. It's like, why did that? Guys, like, you're kind of missing the mark here of like, you get special, like, it's kind of missing the mark of an equality message.
Did it feel like really pandering and like gross, sort of? Okay,
a little bit. It was like, it was almost there with a good equality message, and then it was just like at the end it was like, no. Like, we didn't quite get it all the way. We tried, almost there. and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it was I think at 20 years ago at this point. So
yeah, I mean, it's an old
era.
movie. Yeah. I mean, that's a thing with watching older media like we did with this and with that. It's like not everything holds up to scrutiny of today. And I don't know, some people are better at dealing with that than others, but like if you're watching a movie from the 60s and it's like not super progressive by today's standards, like, end of shit, man. It was the 1960s.
Yeah,
things have changed a lot since then.
We tried to rewatch Peter Pan. We got 40 minutes in when they started doing the Native American stuff, and it was like, nope, turning that right the fuck off. This is racist as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know. I can like manage watching older stuff like that and just be like, oh, that's not great, but this movie's still good. It's just like you got to watch it with the context of knowing that it's very problematic.
Yes, exactly. And I think they're getting better about that. Like, I think with some of those older movies, they have like
they have like a disclaimer.
A disclaimer of like, this does not represent the company today. These were older views. It's like, good way to save some face.
Yeah. The company today is all about like supporting gay rights while also funding the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida, so just way more two-faced than they used to be.
Harvey.
Yeah, but that's gonna be it for us this week, I think. Thank you all so much for watching or listening. If you like the show, share it around. Check out our TikTok now that we have that. And we'll be back next episode for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantum Mania. We are returning to the MCU for the first time in not all that long. But Niles, until then, where can people find you online?
Follow me on Instagram at Niles Got No Styles. Dylan, what about you? Where can people follow you?
On Instagram at DylanD1026, on Twitter at D-Day Movies, on YouTube at D-Day Movies, and on Twitch at D-Day_movies. Thank you all again so much. Have a great 2 weeks, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.